Hey, how are you doing, girl? Good morning. So today is the 10th of February, 2019, and I thought I'd take some time out and have a conversation with you about what's going on with me. Um, let's see. What is going on with me? Well, I'm looking at myself right now in the mirror and or in the image, and I've got really big hair today. That's what's going on with me. Big hair. And let's see what else is going on. Uh, I don't know. I uh, I have been thinking about changing my focus about what I've been creating in the kitchen lately. Lately, I've been creating things like cookies and cupcakes and cakes, and um, I've really been enjoying that. I last night I tried to make some brownies. What happened though is that the plastic bag that the brownie mix came in, well, that bag split open before I had a chance to put it in the pan. And so what happened was that the mixture fell into the sink. And so I had to scrap the brownie making project last night. Um, I've been thinking about how it might be better to focus on making fruit smoothies or maybe even Mexican food. I've been really enjoying making burritos lately. In fact, I think I already plan to have at least two burritos for lunch today. I've really been falling in love with burritos because they're so simple to make and they're so tasty. I love the taste of crispy, flaky tortillas that have been baked or at least toasted on the stovetop gas flame. And I've just been loving burritos lately, and I think I want to change my focus. And the reason is because the main reason is because I want to focus on healthy food lately with this focus on, believe it or not, salty foods. I've been focusing on some salty foods and some uh, and sweet foods. Um, I'm not feeling as well about my diet as I think I probably could be, and so I think I want to get back into healthy eating again. um, yeah, so that's where I'm going for that. With that, I have been focusing on fruit lately too. I've got some watermelon in the refrigerator and some pears. And of course, I regularly eat strawberries, blueberries, apples, and oranges. And I think I'm going to continue that focus on fruit. I think that's probably a good choice. You know, life is all about making good choices, slightly better choices day after day. It's also about sort of removing temptation from your surroundings, right? If you know um, that you fall into like conditioned behavior, which um, is sort of less than optimal, then ideally keep that behavior or triggers for that behavior as far away as possible, not only physically in your external environment, but also in your mental environment too. Your ideas, try to keep those ideas as far away from you as possible. Ones that don't work in your interests, ideas that um, so tend to be self-sabotaging. Try to keep those ideas as far away as possible and at least try to come up with some competitive ideas, entertain those ideas through distraction techniques as much as you can to keep those poorer ideas away, at a distance. That's the continuous struggle of being human. I wanted to mention something that I've been discovering lately as I've been watching or tracking some of the scientific studies that have been coming out lately in the um, periodicals about medicine and psychology. Um, I've my attention has been piqued after I've read articles about a new study. Well, relatively new. I think it was conducted about a year ago, and it had to do with an experiment related to the brain's cerebellum. Now, the cerebellum is a region of the brain that it helps a person's body um, coordinate their behaviors and coordinate their movements. People with damage to the cerebellum, they're just, when it comes to motor control, muscular control, they have deficits. And the study noticed a connection between not only movement in the cerebellum, which was expected, but also the body's or the brain's reward system and the cerebellum. Turns out, interestingly enough, that the cerebellum region has about half of your brain's neurons in it, which is a high concentration of neurons. And apparently nearby the cerebellum is the brain's reward system. And turns out that the cerebellum and the reward system are mutually triggered. Um, and I won't go into details about how they discovered this or what study they did. They did it with rats. Anyway, I think they used some kind of phosphorescent chemical that they sort of spliced into the mouse's DNA. But beyond that, this connection is a solid point that I want to make. And that is that the cerebellum is use of it is strongly connected to the brain's reward system. That is, movement itself is strongly linked to the brain's reward system. And I want to talk about this subject on a higher level, perhaps as it relates to evolution and how our species came to develop. And I'm just going to touch on it and the idea that, as a human being, I think it was very adaptive for movement and behavior and action to be rewarded by the brain. I think that action, almost any kind of coordinated action that was orchestrated by the brain, apparently is just inherently part of the brain's reward system. It's kind of funny. The phrase "busy like a bee" comes to mind. There's also another beavers, busy like a beaver. It's interesting that these phrases sort of found their way into our culture. I think there's an inherent reward system going on when it comes to movement. I think about athletes, right? And the pleasure that they get from moving their bodies playing games. I also think about artists who are involved in dance and who just dance all the time because they enjoy dance. There's something basic about movement and just general activity that the brain rewards. And I want to let you know about this. I think this is a really deep fact about human beings and how we survive and thrive and what is rewarded in our brains. It's just part of our makeup, right? Our biology, our physiology. It's just how our brains sort of guide behavior. And it turns out that action is rewarded. Almost any kind of action, anytime you move your legs or your arms or maybe your mouth, there are inherent rewards to that. And I just wanted to let you know about that. And what it indicates is that the more movement, the more reward, right? The more action, the more reward. Apparently, through the millennia, the human brain has recognized that the more action that is conducted, the basically that enhances fitness in our external environment for the organism. And so all action needs to be rewarded. Now, here's the thing. Now, of course, human beings are also quite lazy. We're all about conserving energy. And so I think there are these two forces that are continuously being, what should I say, at loggerheads with one another. They constrain one another. They balance out one another. They're trade-offs, okay? They're trade-offs between conserving energy and action, right? Those are the two ends of the continuum. And somehow the brain has to monitor and measure and balance these two tendencies, right? The desire to conserve energy and the desire to act. And each of them has its benefits, right? One of the fantastic things about living in our civilization today is that we have plenty of energy. There are lots of safe ways to, well, first of all, we have lots of access to food, right? The main resource that we need to conduct ourselves with action, which is calories. I've got as many calories as I want to have access to. If I want to move 7,000 calories worth of movement a day, I can do it. I can get my hands on 7,000 calories a day if I wanted to. What that will do is it will trigger huge reward system. My reward system will just be triggered all day, every day. And so anyway, this is, I think, a powerful, this is an advantage that we have living in our culture, how we've developed the resource of finding calories. I think a lot of people are stuck in this idea that it's important to conserve energy, right? Everyone is focused on how work is a problem and we need to lessen it, right? We need more. A lot of people are focused on things like retirement, right? They want to reduce the amount of energy and effort that they use during the day. That's a very ancient kind of cultural idea, right? It's about efficiency, and it's almost like a poverty mindset. This idea that you want to do less physically somehow, and that's beneficial. A lot of people spend a lot of time watching television, right? Or sitting down at work and conserving energy that way. And what I'm suggesting is that reality and the brain reward action. They reward activity. And our civilization makes it possible for us to get access, first of all, to perform activities that are in our best interests and are safe, and gives us a lot of guidance on what activities to perform to maximize our long-term self-interests. This is an amazing time to be alive, truly amazing. And anyway, I just want to emphasize this idea about this amazing opportunity that exists. It's part of our biology, part of our physiology, how action is rewarded. And I think this goes to the goal, right? The intent of building a life worth living, one that has lots of meaning and personal and physical rewards. And I think action is the key. This is my point. My point is that action is physiologically rewarded in the brain, and culture and how we've managed our resources allows us to take advantage of this amazing benefit. And so, what I'm suggesting here is that if you want to sort of um, get as much reward in life as possible, my suggestion is that you just keep moving. Get get action. Get action oriented. If you're at work or at school, take action, physical action to maximize the rewards that you get at work. Make sure that those rewards sort of are connected to your physicality, right? If you can go out, I don't know I don't know how you can integrate these ideas necessarily, but if you can connect sort of success in your field at work or in school or with your own body, if you can connect that with actionable behavior, that you will be rewarded for it externally and internally. Anyway, I'm excited about that realization about how the cerebellum basically triggers the brain's reward system. This is an essential recognition or learning, because today in our society, people are becoming more and more inactive, right? They're playing more video games, watching more TV, spending time on their smartphone and computers. And the result is that quite often we're having more problems with mental illness, more problems with depression, anxiety, even anger. I'm noticing that in our political world. There's a lot of sadness in the world, and I think that a lot of it can be linked to inactivity. Apparently, our reward systems are not getting triggered the way they need to be, and I think that actionable behavior no matter what it is, whether it's washing the dishes, doing the laundry, going on long walks, maybe it's running, going to the gym. I honestly don't care what kind of actions you're taking. So long as you're taking some kind of action, right? Your brain will plan to take action that is most in your interest if you can just keep moving. I guess that's the final piece of advice. It's a 2-word phrase. Keep moving. If you want success in your life, let me suggest that you just keep moving. That you stand up, you go do the laundry, clean your room, stand up and go talk to someone. Get up out of your chair and travel to another destination. Make it happen. Strike up a conversation. Create your own reality. Make invitations. Be generous with your time and energy. And you will be successful. Even if it's not in your external reality. Well, whereas I'm almost certain that if you take action every day, massive amounts of action, that you will get payoffs in your external reality and your internal reality as well, through the connection of your cerebellum with its reward system. Anyway, that's a little tip for you, Emily. Take massive action, and not only will you be rewarded in your physical world, your external world, but you're in your internal world, and there's really no way to avoid that reward. Anyway, there's a little bit of fatherly advice for you. Something I'm realizing, something that's becoming apparent to me in so many ways. And I wanted to pass that little nugget of wisdom on to you. All right. So that's one thing I'm really excited about, that recognition. So another thing I'm excited about is this book I'm reading. The title is Positive Inquiry. And I figured what I'd do is with this Kindle, I would go over some of the points that I've highlighted in the text. Yes, I've highlighted passages in the text, and I figured that we'd go through them and probably discuss them point by point. So here is something that I highlighted in the book. The passage starts with, conversations lie at the heart of how we interact. We're almost always engaged in either internal dialogue or external interaction. So, first of all, I like this frame. The frame is about a focus on conversations and how, first of all, conversations are how we create our reality. External conversations, internal conversations, we are always engaged in conversations, but not always. Like the other day, I walked 6 miles at La Prisma Mission, and I found that the second half of my walk, the last hour, I found that my mind did not spend a lot of time in internal dialogue. It was an interesting noticing, and it probably just had to do with physical fatigue, but I think partly it was just, I just want to recognize that you're not always in conversation internally, but much of your life is spent in conversation, in internal dialogue or external dialogue. This is how we are creating our realities. The next passage is, they are weary of wasting time on conversations that focus on what's wrong without producing any actionable results. So I think this passage has to do with what's going on in the workplace. Their idle conversation can be recreational, but at the same time, idle conversation can be meaningless, right? I'm just listening to the rain as it's falling. I don't know if you've been noticing, Emily, but it's been really raining a lot lately. The last week or two, really about 2 weeks or so, it's been raining a ton. In fact, personally, after this, I'm going to be traveling to Los Angeles, and I'll probably be spending a lot of that driving time in the rain. And I'm just so glad, by the way. I was speaking to a friend of mine on the phone who lives in Northern California in the mountains, and he's experiencing a lot of snow right now. It's like blizzard-like conditions, he's got 2 feet of snow in his driveway. And I'm just so happy to know that there's no snow where I am living. I love the Central Coast of California. I'm a big fan of sunshine, and I'm fine with rain. It's snow that I don't care for. And so I feel really fortunate to live in a place that doesn't get snow. And, my heart goes out to a lot of people who are struggling in the snow right now. But anyway, it's been raining a lot. I just wanted to acknowledge all the rain. Okay, so here's the next passage that I highlighted. People long for meaningful engagement that builds connection, fuels productivity, and generates positive change. Yeah. People are all about recognizing the discrepancy between what they want and what they have, right? And so for human beings, there's this continuous desire for change, right? Um, Human beings are basically never satisfied. We always want something new, something better, an easier way of doing things, a way of doing things that is more rewarding. And so we're always, I think human beings in general are advocates for change. Um, so we're always looking for better ways. At least I am always looking for better ways to live my life. I'm looking for meaningful engagement that builds connection and productivity. So the next passage that I highlighted is this passage, and it says, "Conversations worth having energize people." Yeah, so this is essentially a definition. What is a conversation worth having? I mean, I've had conversations not worth having, and a lot of the time, those conversations focus on subjects that are rather um, trivial, right? They're somewhat impersonal. For example, we talk about the weather, or maybe we talk about sports, something like that, or maybe we just talk about um, well, what's going on right now. Actually, I'm a big fan of talking about what's going on right now in the present moment. Any kind of present moment talk, I think, can be beneficial and can lead to good stuff happening. But anyway, I am an advocate of what I'd call authentic relationships, authentic communication. And anyway, a lot of surface conversation can be kind of annoying. I like to go deep, just like everyone likes to go deep. And mainly because, those conversations are meaningful. And they often have a tendency to be energizing as well. So another passage that I highlighted is this one. This passage states, "They foster efficiency, fuel meaningful engagement, and generate creative possibilities. They matter because they inspire cooperative action that has positive impact for individuals, organizations, and communities." So, was it yesterday? Or no, I think it might have been the day before. I was talking about positive inquiry and this idea of the positivity principle. And I wanted to get a little more detail about what the positivity principle means in uh, in the subject of positive inquiry. I think the positivity principle has to do with us. It starts out with positive images and ideas in the brain, which lead to positive actions, and positive actions lead to positive outcomes. So it's like a domino effect. We start with positive ideas, we move on to positive actions, and they have positive results. And this is, I think, a really powerful idea. I think a lot of times people fall into what I'd call self-destructive behavior, right? They engage in self-sabotaging behavior. A lot of examples of that are things like anger. In fact, a lot of actions that people perform as a result of being angry tend to be self-sabotaging, right? Particularly when others notice these behaviors. And it can be a self-sabotaging behavior can be something as simple as a sigh at the wrong time in a conversation. It can be as something as simple as an expression on someone's face. Yeah, nonverbal behaviors are like 80% of communication. And so it's really important that the ideas that you have are framed in positive terms that you're using a positive frame, because it's that positive frame which will guide or conduct your nonverbal behavior. And it's all about signaling what you're signaling to other people. Without that positive frame, you could be inadvertently signaling with your nonverbal behavior messages to other people that indicate that you're being standoffish or insincere. You might basically, what you're indicating to others, you're signaling to others, are that you're not interested in cooperating with them. And maybe that you're even planning to act against them. And other people will pick up on these vibes, right? And so it's critical that we focus on the positive frame of our ideas first. That positive frame must be there in order to maintain goodwill in your relationships. And it might just be it, even if you have no conversation with other people. I'm saying that this positive frame is important when it comes to expressing your nonverbal behavior, which is largely not under our control. Our ideas are under our control. Our nonverbal behavior is all quite automatic. What's next? So here's another passage that I outlined in the book about positive inquiry. We show you how to frame conversations in ways that make people you're talking with want to engage and take action. Yeah. It's about leadership. The next passage I highlighted is this one. It says, from our vantage point, one of the most exciting things about life is the power of a single conversation to make a significant positive difference. Yeah, I totally agree with this. I think that all it takes is a single conversation to start a domino effect, right? A knock-on effect to make improvements in one's life. Really, and you know what? This conversation also might be a conversation you don't have with another person. This conversation might be a conversation you have only with yourself. Yeah. In fact, let me argue for a moment. All conversations are conversations you have with yourself. I know. So this is getting to this idea about how everything is projection, right? It's a realization that your brain is surrounded by your skull. And really the only thing, your brain is always continually talking to itself. Even when you think you're having a conversation with another person, you're not. You're always having a conversation with yourself. You're always having a conversation with yourself. This is something about reality that is profoundly true. It's all about you. It's all about you. It's never about the other person. It's never about the situation. Never about your external reality. It's always about you. Why? Your brain is locked in your skull, and your brain can't get out. And the only thing that can get in are signals, right? It's basically information, right? Patterns of light, patterns of sound, and you interpret. Well, who's doing the interpreting? You're doing the interpreting of what these patterns of light and sound are doing. Other people are so separated. This is an existential truth, that other people's minds are separate from yours. And you can really never know what's going on in other people's minds. You really can never know. You can make good guesses, I suppose, that can be verified. perhaps, but you're always separated from them. There's no connection, and you're always making guesses about what another person is doing and what it means to that person and what it means to you. You may not even be sure what it means to you. So, what I'm emphasizing is the separation of minds, which is an existential fact. And because of that, what that means is that we're always just guessing what's going on with other people. We don't really know. And all we have to interpret reality is our own subjective thoughts. And even our conception of reality is something that's created by us in our own minds through our own interpretation. Everything is your perception. It's your construction. And so, anyway, I think I'd probably beat that one with a dead horse, but it's important for you to know that your life is all about you only. It's never about anyone else. And that's why it's really important for you to have a positive frame. Because it's the only way to really survive in the world and do so in a way without causing yourself undue emotional pain, right? Because all the hurt that you've ever experienced in your life has been generated by you alone. Mm-hmm. All the emotional pain that you have and have ever had and ever will have will be created by you. And it's never, ever created by another person. Another person is never, ever the cause of your bad feelings, of your hurt, of your hurting. It's just the truth, man. I'm only here to tell you the truth, or to what I think the truth is. And this is probably one of the deepest facts that people don't regularly recognize. This whole blaming and judgmental culture is a fantasy. That's right. It is a complete fantasy. And, it sort of, there's a perspective that the brain sort of has learned through cultural conditioning. And that is that, in order to have control, right, more certainty in the world, human beings, we live in a world that's so changing. We're always grasping for certainty, and for us saying that we know it, we know that claim of knowing stuff really helps us with sort of grab on to certainty and feel secure, right? It's about security. Well, I should say it's about insecurity and security, and how knowing something, this idea of knowing something brings us comfort and security. And that's why we judge, right? We judge because we're insecure. And we want to nail down explanations for the world, and we make them up. We make up these explanations, and then we pretend. It's all about pretending. We pretend that these explanations are true and move forward based on them. And judgments are how we do it, right? There are analytical judgments, and then there are moral judgments. I've spoken about this dichotomy before, and it's just how we get along in the world as part of our conceptual consciousness, right? How we make decisions. We have to make analytical judgments, distinctions. We need to decide what matches and what doesn't match. And that's okay. That's actually quite morally neutral. But there are moral judgments that we make regularly that have no basis, no true basis in reality, have also very little cognitive content. That is, they have very little actual meaning. Anyway, I'm getting far afield here. But I guess the real point that I want to make is that your life is your own, and that you have the ability to decide how much emotional pain you want to experience in it. It's your choice. Isn't it wonderful? It's wonderful and tragic at the same time. Because so few people recognize it. Anyway, let's move on. So the next quotation is this one. It's still in the introduction of the Positive Inquiry book. And it is a quotation from David L. Cooperrider, who stated, "We live in worlds our conversations create." Absolutely. Yeah. So human beings are meaning machines, which to me means that we are continuously creating meaning. We're figuring out how our external reality aligns with our values, right? Things we think are important. And we do this through story, right? That is, we make distinctions, we make comparisons, and we compare and contrast how our external world is going, right? This is about interpretation. It's a subjective interpretation of the world. It's how we get along in the world. And so these conversations that we have with ourselves, well, these are what create our world. You know, and here's the problem: you need to choose the right words. Right? I'm continuously talking about narrative. Narrative is critically important. Every word has a definition. It also has a connotation. And both the definition and the connotation are extremely important in terms of defining the, say, intensity of the emotions that you're having. Every word is critically important, and particularly any word that you use habitually, it is essential that you use the right words. Choosing the right words is essentially like choosing your reality. How do you create your reality? You create your reality through word choice. Okay. So it's important to have rules. These appreciative inquiry rules are rules for word choice, right? They're rules for choosing your words. It's how you create your reality. Get in some good stuff here, man. All right, let's move on to the next passage. So the next passage that I highlighted is this one. Life worth living must be made of affirmation. Okay, why would that be the case? Why would a life worth living be made of affirmation? So let me figure out. Affirmation is gratitude. Affirmation is valuing. Affirmation is appreciation. Affirmation is thankfulness, right? A life worth living is one that is pleasant, it's peaceful, it's enjoyable, right? A life worth living is a life that is wonderful, right? Lives that are not worth living are painful. They hurt. And there are thoughts can bring you pain and they can bring you pleasure. And notice how it is the thought that brings you pain and pleasure. There are painful thoughts and there are pleasurable thoughts. And wonderfully, you have the choice to choose how you want to paint your world. And you do that through choices you make every day, right? Choices that you make about how you string together words in your narrative, right? The meaning that you create. And a life worth living is one that is a life that's created through conversations, external and internal, that are either made up of words which are neutral or positive. Now, you might ask yourself, why do people commit suicide? Why? Because they want relief, right? They want security. They're feeling rather insecure. They want relief. So how do people who commit suicide ever get to the point? Ever get to the point of committing suicide? Well, it must be that they're experiencing pain and insecurity. And what creates the insecurity? You can imagine 100 people, and they are all experiencing the same external reality. Now, what percentage of them will commit suicide? I don't know what the numbers are, but let's say it's like 5%. That means 95% aren't. They're experiencing the same external reality. I mean, we're all experiencing the same external reality. Now, I don't want to necessarily minimize the role of physical pain, the role that physical pain plays. So that is a game changer, and I'm not going to talk at length about chronic pain, because first of all, I don't know a lot about it, but I understand that can be a factor. Um, I do happen to recognize that pain has two parts. There's a physical part and a psychological part, and both those parts are real. Okay, it's not like one part is imaginary and it can be dismissed. No, both physical and psychological pain are real, and are so. Like I said, I'm not necessarily going to go into that at length right now, but so I recognize how the existence of pain could be a problem and can lead to suicide. And I also want to mention that suicide isn't always a bad thing. Let me tell you, like, nature is neutral, and look, a person choosing to end their life can be made rationally. And I think that suicide can be a rational and appropriate decision sometimes. And though I want to also caveat that statement by saying that it doesn't happen very often, right? It's sort of sometimes it's not all too easy to tell whether suicide is an appropriate decision or not. It's not easy to tell. Yeah. So what I'm doing now is I'm basically letting you know that there is a place for rightful suicide, that exists. It just does. It's real, exists. It exists and can be a virtuous act. And it can be an appropriate act. And it also can be an act that is in one's self-interest. It just can. So I'm aware of that as well. Okay, next question or next statement. Okay, so I think this is going to be the last statement I'm going to highlight. Change begins with a single conversation. Yeah. We're always sort of any point in time can be a turning point. This is what's so great about being a human being, is that human beings are so flexible. Our lives are so plastic that All it takes is encountering an idea one time, and we can make different choices. And these choices can be long lasting, and they can have long term effects. And, you know, isn't that great? So, what that means is we're never stuck, right? Human beings are never stuck. We can always make different choices. And, that itself is empowering. And, maybe I think I'm going to stop right there. That's a really empowering thought. So, my I'm going to wrap things up a little bit here. I'm hope I'm hoping that you've enjoyed our little discussion about appreciative inquiry and conversations and how critical they are to helping define your reality. You construct your reality based on the conversations that you have all day with yourself. And, your reality is your choice. You basically come up with your frame, you come up with your perspective. And it's actually your frame and perspective are made up of multiple perspectives, right? I call it a multi-theoretical approach. That is, we come up with lots of different theories about how the world works. And, we do this in a choiceful way with our own volition, using our executive power in our cerebral cortex through the benefit of our cerebral cortex. And, being a human being is just this entirely amazing miracle that's unfolding moment to moment. And, I just want you to acknowledge that. I want you to feel a sense of awe, just to recognize. I want you to recognize this amazing miracle that's happening in your life moment to moment. And, let me suggest to you that the fact of this miracle of breath and living moment to moment sort of is more important than, I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to convey is that this awe about living overrides and supersedes even your most sad, dark, angry thoughts about the world. I mean, the fact that we can even conceptualize our lives in dark terms is worth celebrating. I'm serious. It's worth celebrating every moment of our lives that we can feel sadness, deep sadness, deep anger, deep regret. I mean, that itself ought to be celebrated. You're alive when countless others are dead. How many people aren't existing right now? Billions, perhaps? Certainly tens of billions of people aren't existing. Tens of trillions of living things are not alive right now. And you are one that has the privilege of being alive. If you are even passively alive, that is, if you have even a modicum of physical ability and physical health, mental health, you are in a privileged state that is essentially godlike. You are a god living on the planet Earth with such privilege. Just being alive is a privilege that is that is boundlessly inspiring and worth appreciating and having gratitude for. So, anyway, you know me, I've spoken in the past about how just the fact of the amazing awe of the moment can override really any sad thoughts about the world at all, any negative thoughts in at the world at all. I mean, if you have the ability to get up and go to work or go to school and then come back home and go to bed and you live a life that's relatively painless, that is enough to help you live a meaningful life. That is enough. That is enough. Okay, so you have zero money in your bank account. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Health is wealth. Health is wealth. There's an equality there. If you can live and breathe and drink and stay alive at least for one moment more, that's a moment that you've got that people don't. Right? Cherish that. Celebrate it. Celebrate it in that moment. The fact that you drew your next breath. And really, that's all you need to live a life of joy and happiness. Do you need anything other than that? Do you need a mate, a romantic partner? Do you need a child? Do you need your legs? No, you don't need those. All you need is the ability to take your next breath. And you've won. That's the jackpot. You've won the lottery. That's the jackpot. You can celebrate every breath. And you really don't need anything else. You could be in jail. Truly, you could be in jail. You could be in some deep, dark chamber in solitary confinement. Doesn't matter. You're still alive. There's still potential out there. You could be a quadriplegic and be happier than Oprah Winfrey, the billionaire. You could be happy. You could be a quadriplegic and be happier than Bill Gates, billionaire. Absolutely. You could live a more meaningful life. Absolutely. Why? Meaning's created by you and you alone. In fact is, every life is meaningful. Human beings are meaning creation machines. But the idea is to create a meaningful life that's as filled with affirmation as possible, as filled with gratitude and thankfulness and love as possible. And you know what? You can do it. Why? Because you're in control. Anyway, as you can see, I'm out of control when it comes to talking about this stuff. I'm trying to wrap things up. So let me wrap up by saying just how much I value you personally, how much I'm grateful that you are in my life. I'm really thankful for you helping to bring more meaning into my life. You're helping me learn so much about myself that I am just so grateful to you for the growth and development that our relationship is prompting me to undergo. It's just stunning, the amount that I'm learning, how I'm growing, how I'm becoming more virtuous every day, creating, basically producing behavior and actions that I admire. I'm finding myself becoming more generous. That's right, generous day by day. Generous with my love and gratitude to others, to myself. I'm just valuing my interaction with others more. And I want you to know about the impact that you're having on my life, even though we're separated, doesn't matter. Let me tell you, all human brains are separated. It's just an existential fact. I mentioned that a moment ago. Um, we are all infinitely separated. And the fact that you and I are separated by a mile, right? I am no more or less separated from you than from anyone else. The separation distance is the same, it's infinite. And so I recognize that the separation distance between, say, your mom and her husband is also infinite too. The separation is equal. And so, anyway, these realizations are critical and important to me. And I just want to basically describe, I want to sort of show this out. I want to have this outpouring of love, recognize this outpouring of love for you, for me, for us, and our relationship. I want you to know that I value us, and you're a big part of my life. And I'm just thankful to have you in it. And I look forward to our future conversations, and I look forward to learning more about what makes you tick, what's on your mind, and what motivates you, what you're passionate about, what you're energized about. I'm really looking forward to that and learning more about you and what I know what it is you love and cherish about the world too. So with that, I want to say goodbye, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Peace and love.